when Royal Enfield invited us high up here in the mountains of Ladakh for the Astral Ride, we got our Himalayan swapped out for a classic 350. Well, because the Himalayas and the Classic are a classical combination. And also because we had 3 tests in mind for the Classic. Because the previous generation Classic had the 500 to torque you up the mountains, whereas the new Classic has only the 350. And well, as it turned out, aside from the 3 tests for the Classic, there was a 4th in store as well. For me, Astral Landscape Photography. Wish me luck. I need it. Test 1. The Astral Ride was looking for the clearest night skies, for which we were looping our way around the Changthang region, going to places like the Pangong Tso, to Hanle, where we have this beautiful observatory. And this meant going over some really high passes. So would the 349cc engine be enough? Would the Classic 350 be enough? Because in our test, we saw that the Classic 350 is a milder-mannered motorcycle when compared to the Meteor.
We started from Leh at 13,000 feet. That was the easy part. But the first climb was not too far away.
Making our way up the mountain here in the company of many Himalayans, the Classic 350 is holding up just fine.
The first pass at 17,000 feet was just around the corner. Over the next few days, we stayed in the thin air at 15,000 feet in the Changthang Plateau. The sights were staggering. They were interrupted only by the many passes. Which tested the Classic's 20.2 PS, which is just 2 horses more than the older bike. Not much of a difference, right?
Now, climbing uphill, coming out of corners, you realize that the Himalayan has more grunt and pulls away quite easily from the Classic 350. The point is, compared to the older Classic, this has got so much more performance. It's so much more effortless up here in the mountains where, typically it would be gasping for breath. That's not the case here. You can enjoy this. Should it have had more grunt? If you're planning to do, two-up riding with luggage, like a lot of people used to and continue to do so, but more so now on the Himalayans. But if you want to do that on the Classic, the 500 would have been fantastic. Imagine the 500 equivalent taking the performance gains that we've seen with the 350. That would be madness. Test 2. When I asked Royal Enfield for the Classic 350, I assumed that the route to Hanle would be, very civilized, and the little bit of rough roading that we would have to do is something that the Classic should be able to deal with, and we had to find out just how well it would deal with it. But as it turned out, the route that we had was a lot more adventurous than I had expected. So the question is, can the Classic 350 rough it out?
Well, I wasn't wrong. There were some great roads. And some fantastic roads. Classic was beautiful, steering willingly, braking confidently. So you could attack the corners. And when you wanted, you could cruise serenely. But it wasn't all smooth sailing.
On the way to Hanle, there was a couple of surprises which tested the brakes and the suspension very, very thoroughly.
I would say it handled that confidently. Then there was the wildlife that loved to race and cut across the road.
That's the Kiang. They know to run with the bikes and then sprint across the road in this crazy fashion. That was crazy.
The tarmac was like a fickle friend. It came and went as it pleased.
Things are getting a bit serious here. Clearly landslide area. Lots of underdevelopment roads.
The Classic wasn't shy of the rough stuff. Although the street-oriented tires weren't quite as well suited to the surfaces like the Himalayans, which had some natural advantages.
Now, for obvious reasons, like more suspension travel, just the chassis being designed for doing these kind of surfaces, the Himalayan obviously has more capability and more composure. But at the same time, I'm gonna have to say that this, as a standard motorcycle, a classic in that sense, what it's managing to do over these road surfaces is really impressive. On the whole, the Classic just seemed to enjoy all of it. It lets you do all of that with a great sense of confidence. You didn't feel nervous at any point. So it's something that's really commendable. Yeah, sure, if you get into the really bumpy bits and you're fast, you're going to feel that bump coming through to you. But at the same time, it's not meant to be thrashed over these surfaces the way I have. This was really a tough test for the Classic. And on the whole, I think it's done pretty well. Because if you were thinking that the Classic has become softer, actually scratch that. It's done incredibly well. Test 3. I have a bit of a history with the Classic. The first time I tested the 500, it leaked oil. The next time I rode it down to Ridermania, this happened. And as we've seen with the new Classic, it's performing better, it can take a beating, but can it keep going when you keep punishing it? Or will it start to bleed and shed body parts?
The Classic's problem wasn't the rocks, the ruts, or the punishing altitude. It was the monkey behind the bars. It was just so easy to get comfortable on the Classic, to find confidence and get into a groove. A fast-paced one.
I really didn't mean to do what I did today with the Classic, but it was just kind of egging me on, like, come on, you can go a bit more. And riding in that almost motocross style, taking up the really big bumps, I thought one puncture would be fair, because I was riding in a way that no tourer ever should or would, because you would want to conserve your motorcycle. I was heaping it a little bit of, I don't want to call it abuse, but I was using the motorcycle to the fullest of its potential, so to speak.
Any worry about the tube-type tires and spoke rims was dusted off. The suspension didn't let the big bumps alter your spine, your confidence, or your itinerary. It bounced up, dove down, thrashed into, and bashed through. Where the Himalayans went, the Classic followed. When you think about it, Royal Enfield could make a Classic Scrambler real easy.
So we came up here via this route, thinking this road will take us to Debring, but apparently the road work is not complete, so we have to backtrack and take the other route. The other route is somewhere down there.
And over there was a dust bowl. Brown clouds blinded and gagged us. I felt the agony of the air filter, but despite all the punishment, the Classic and I carried on.
What went wrong with the Classic 350? As you can look at the fork legs and see, there is, there are no leaks there or around the engine, and all the foot pegs are in place. So it hasn't wept, bled, or shed any body parts through this story. And that is pretty impressive. Actually, yes, one thing did go wrong. Yes, the mirrors came loose. Yes, that was one thing. And aside from that, there was one more thing that we did observe. And that's right here. You can see that there's some scuffing there from the clutch cable. Yeah, so that's what's heaping a lot of rough usage on the Classic 350 results in. Yeah, that's it. Test 3.
With the Classic's test completed, it was time for me to show what I could do.
It has like some 20 different knobs to set it up. You like need a PhD in tripods. And in the dark, and it's cold, it's under 10 degrees. Usually, when people start talking about ISO, shutter speed, exposure, I tell them to f-stop and just pee off. But when it comes to astral landscape photography, it's not gonna work. So the good thing is, we've got an expert to help us out, and hopefully I won't be completely terrible. We've got to get some good pics.
Navaneet Unnikrishnan is an astral photography magician.
Yeah, why don't you take over? Be prepared.
So, right now when we are going to shoot, we'll be shooting in manual, completely in manual, okay? So, we rotate this knob till here, alright? So, it's in manual settings, so you'll have all the control over the shutter.
And he was my genie. With Navneet's guidance, I got better and better. Then I got more ambitious. First the bike came into the frame, and then me. This picture is gorgeous, isn't it? Well, obviously, Navneet took it. The combination of the night sky, the motorcycles that led us there and kept us company, and the memories that we would take back home. Saying goodbye to this unbelievable sight, to the Astral Ride Changthang, was hard. Harder still was to say goodbye to the Classic 350, which, like the sky above it, proved to be gorgeous. A fitting motorcycle to be called a classic, a legend.